IT and Human Cognition, presented by Lauren Short and Vikram Bashah. Yes, the widespread use of IT is fundamentally changing the way we think and is, in fact, making us dumber. We are here to present for the motion that this statement is true. To begin, we'll take a look at how strategy is impacted by the use of IT. Charles Darwin stated, "Looking back, I think it was more difficult to see what the problems were than to solve them." And for Pablo Picasso, in 1964, when he was asked by an interview about new electronic calculating device machines, soon to become known as computers, he stated, "But they are useless. They can only give you answers." The gap between question and answer is where creativity thrives and scientific process is made. Raising a toast to Einstein, George Bernard Shaw remarked, "Science is always wrong. It never solves a problem without creating 10 more. Furthermore, the ability to search is impacted by IT. As Amit Shanah said, "The more accurate the machine gets, the lazier the questions become." This is a result from Google's enhancements to make searching easier. Unfortunately, it has made the user's ability to ask questions and write complete sentences harder. And Don Liu said, "Wikipedia, for instance, has become the Bible for so many, yet it's not fact-checked." Google is known as a search engine, yet there is barely any searching involved anymore. Wikipedia and Google are best treated as starting points rather than destinations, and we should recognize that human interaction will always play a vital role in fueling the quest for knowledge. In 2005, researchers at the University of Connecticut asked a group of 7th graders to read a website full of information about the Pacific Northwest tree octopus, or Octopus paxibolus. The webpage described the creature's leafy habitat, diet, and mating rituals in precise detail. Then, applying an analytical model they'd learned, the students evaluated the trustworthiness of the site and the information it offered. Their assessment: the tree octopus was legit. All but one of the pupils rated the website as very credible. The headline of the university's press release that heralded the results of the study read, "Researchers find kids need better online academic skills." It quoted Don Liu, professor of education at UConn and co-director of its New Literacies Research Lab, lamenting that classroom instruction in online reading is woefully lacking. The desire to learn. The internet can make us feel omniscient, but its feeling of not knowing which inspires the desire to learn. A great question should launch a journey of exploration. Instant answers can leave us idling at base camp. Lostein pointed out that a person who knows the capitals of 3 of 50 American states is likely to think of herself as knowing something. "I know 3 state capitals." But a person who has learned the names of 47 state capitals is likely to think of herself as not knowing 3 state capitals, and thus more likely to take the effort to learn those other 3. These psychologists coined the term cognitive miser to describe the stinginess with which the brain allocates limited attention and its inbuilt propensity to seek mental shortcuts. Susan Fiske and Shelley Taylor also stated that the word effort is important. It's hardly surprising that we love the ease and fluency of the modern web. Our brains are designed to avoid anything that seems like hard work. We have become habituated to an endless supply of easy answers. You might even say dependent. With enhancements in technology, the consistent use of smartphones with the autocomplete function that enables the user to only type a few letters and then the phone pre-fills the rest seems to make adolescent users faster at texting but less accurate when responding to a battery of cognitive tests. In 2007, Michelle Coinard, a psychology professor at the University of California, analyzed recordings of 4 children interacting with their respective caregivers for 2 hours at a time, for a total of more than 2,000 hours. She found that on average, the children posed more than 100 questions every hour. Very small children use questions to elicit information. What is this called? But as they grow older, their questions become more probing. They start looking for explanations and insight as to why and how. The more confident questioners weren't necessarily the children who got more answers from their parents, but the ones who got more questions. Parents who threw questions back to their children, "I don't know, what do you think?" raised children who asked more questions of them. To ask good questions, it helps if you have built your own library of answers. It has been proposed that the internet relieves us of the onerous burden of memorizing information. Why cram our heads with facts, like the date of the French Revolution, when they can be summoned up with a swipe of a couple clicks? But knowledge doesn't just fill the brain up, it makes it work better. The knowledge you've gathered over the years has made your brain's central processing unit more powerful. This tells us something about the idea we should outsource our memories to the web. It's a shortcut to stupidity. Again, if we outsource our brains to the web, we no longer house the information we need to make brighter conclusions. Cognitive scientists long ago identified the generation effect, the fact that we understand and remember answers that we generate ourselves better than those that are provided to us by a calculator, for instance. A study led by researchers at the University of Coventry in Britain found that kids who sent 3 or more text messages a day had significantly lower scores on literacy tests than children who sent none. Psychologist Betsy Sparrow of Columbia University, in a study published in Science last year, when people expect to have future access to information, Sparrow wrote, they have lower rates of recall of the information itself and enhanced recall instead for where to access it. People are failing to note the ever-widening chasm between fact and opinion, Dan Willington, a professor of psychology at the University of Virginia, is a leading expert on how people learn. Data from the last 30 years leads to the conclusion that it is not scientifically challengeable. Thinking well requires knowing facts, and that's true not only because you need to know something, but to think about. How does this impact us? The ability to Google the date of Black Tuesday does not imply that the person understands why the Great Depression happened or provide the ability to make comparisons with our recent economic slump. And dividing attention among email and other tasks cause workers' intellectual ability to decrease as though they missed a whole night's sleep or as if they'd been smoking marijuana. Development reading specialists Ann Cunningham and Keith Stanovich reported in the Journal of Direct Instruction that scores on tests of general knowledge were highest among people who read newspapers, magazines, and books, and lowest among those who watched a lot of TV. These are all reasons as to why technology has made us dumber. I will now hand the presentation over.
Now, we will look at some of the experiments that were conducted to show how IT is changing us, but not in a good way. Associate Professor Val Hooper and Master student Chana Herath from Wellington's Victoria University on the analysis of online and offline reading behavior found that online reading generally does not have a positive impact on people's cognition. Concentration, comprehension, absorption, and recall rates when engaging with online material were all much lower than traditional text. While many respondents said they had learned to read faster and more selectively, they also admitted they were more likely to remember material they had read offline. People who rely on GPS to get around have less activity in the hippocampus, an area of the brain involved in both memory and navigation, according to a series of studies presented in 2010. Using spatial memory, which involves using visual cues to develop cognitive maps that remember routes instead of operating on GPS induced autopilot, can help avert memory problems later in life, the studies found. A 2008 study from the University of London even found that taxi drivers had more developed hippocampi than non taxi drivers, perhaps because they are so accustomed to navigating cities using spatial memory, rather than relying on GPS, through that, though that may no longer be true of smartphone equipped taxi drivers. People who use People used to be able to retain really vast quantities of knowledge, like reciting entire novels word for word, but technology has eliminated both the need and the drive to do so. When you know that Google or your smartphone can retain a piece of information for you, you are less likely to store it in memory. Studies have shown. Scientific American last year likened the internet to an external hard drive for our brains, as we outsource an increasing amount of information to the web. That's not the worst thing in the world, Scientific American adds. We have always outsourced some of the information to external hard drives of sorts, relying on friends rather than technology to fill in the gaps in our knowledge. But these days, we are outsourcing way more. You don't really need science to know this, but technology makes it easier to get distracted. Whether that's stepping away from an important project to check your smartphone or flipping between multiple browser tabs without really focusing on anyone. It has been proven that toggling between multiple tasks at once doesn't actually work. In fact, you just wind up performing all your duties even worse. Teens in particular are more distracted than ever. A 2012 Pew Research Center survey of more than 2,400 teachers found that most educators feel students are more distracted than previous generations. Some 87% of teachers agreed with the statement. Today's digital technologies are creating an easily distracted generation with short attention spans. While 64% agreed with the idea that today's digital technologies do more to distract students than to help them academically. Now let me ask you some personal questions. Like, what did you Google last Monday? Can you remember any specific details? How did it end? On the other hand, like, what was the last book you read? Or the book you read almost 3 years back? How did that end? I can bet you that you would remember more about the book, at least, or at least remember how it ended, rather than what you browsed just last week. Nicholas Carr, the author of The Shadows, How the Internet is Changing How We Think, said, "My interest in the subject is not just academic, it's personal. I was inspired to write the book after I realized that I was losing my own capacity for concentration and contemplation. Even when I was away from my computer, my mind seemed hungry for constant stimulation, for quick hits of information. I felt perpetually distracted. Could my loss of focus be a result of all the time I have spent online?" In search of an answer to that question, he began to dig into the many psychological, behavioral, and neurological studies that examine how the tools we use to think with our information technologies shape our habits of mind. So by these examples, we can clearly see that the internet and technology have no doubt helped us, but they have also made us a little dumb. So uh, by this, I'm like coming to an end of our presentation, and these are the possible references we could get while searching for our topic. And thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, then you can comment on our post, and we'll be happy to reply. Thanks.